All right, guys. Welcome to another edition of A Drink with Charith. We have a very special line of guests this evening. It's good to have you on the show, and it's a while that I have done this, and it's good to be back. Doing what I have been doing for over a period of time, and we have picked up a very interesting subject, this evening to speak. Uh, it's a subject that has been spoken very widely in various segments, social media, the main media, and in other sporting circles and other forums. And so these are two gentlemen who had been in this field over a period of time and who had done it. Uh, have done this line of work, and have taken it to another level and been very successful in what they do. They're brilliant. They're brilliant player management in a clients when it comes to client servicing and so on and so forth. Without further ado, that I would like to welcome my two special guests tonight. Uh, One is my former teammate Ravi Silva, whom I have played cricket from my younger days, my school days, and then we were team members at CCC. Ravi, great to have
Hey,
you on the show, buddy. How are you doing?
all good, mate.
All right, good to see you. And the man himself, the Statsman, all the way from Kiwi land, the man himself, Mr. Boa Athu. How are you doing, Boa?
Hey, Charlie,
Very
Charlie,
well,
I need
thank
to
you.
I need to annoy Boa a bit, but hold on a minute.
What's that? What are you wearing?
Boa, can you see
Oh,
what I'm
Well,
wearing?
that's my team.
Okay, we're on the same side, Maja.
I'm actually a coach educator with the Blues region. So
With the
that's my
blues, yeah. I just love the blues, Maja.
all right,
Yeah, look,
great stuff.
yeah, nice to be here. Thanks for having me. Yes, and very intriguing episode today, Ravi. I'm actually really keen to listen to what you have to say. Maybe I'll learn a thing or two as well.
No,
I
no,
know.
it's the other way around, mate.
All right. Big hi to everyone joining us. It's nice to see so many people in online already, and lots of people who ask me that anyone who's going to miss the show, that they always get the opportunity to watch it later on. And absolutely no problem. That it will be once it's on Facebook and it's on YouTube, that you can watch it anytime you want. The people want leisurely. There's absolutely no hurry. And yeah, let's start with Ravi. I think. Bo, what do you say, mate? Age before beauty. Just.
Well, I have to
Huh?
say, Charith, with your new look, you remind me of Graham Norton. Unbelievable.
I knew that I knew at some point it's going to be that the focal point, and that you'll be talking about it. Yeah, mate. This is what I would like to call the COVID look. Just to have a change, and see like to see how it all goes. I'm pretty. I never had a beard in my life, but I never thought that I could grow one either. But it seems okay. It's all good. Yeah, big afternoon to Manix, Morpher, Sanjeev. Good morning, gentlemen. All the way he's in USA. The rest of the guys are from down under. And yeah, we got a worldwide audience. Okay, Ravi, let's start with you, mate. That you have been in this trade over a period of time now. That I remember that when you first spoke to me, that you had this idea and you were in the corporate sector during that time, and you had a you had a very demanding day job, and that's in the travel trade. You were heading that entire operation. With all the work that you had, you decided to venture into this, the player management client servicing area. Initially, what was it? It was just a long business plan or your retirement plan. What made you get into this, to start with, mate? All yours.
Um, yeah, so like I mean, just as much as you look at a player and his post-retirement story, which you have to play a big role about, right? My corporate world was probably coming into an end about 4 years ago. So about 15 years ago, I decided that I probably have something in the DNA vis-a-vis leadership. Playing cricket, playing rugby for college, perhaps more a rugby lover than a cricket lover. Although I played both sports, I think reasonably well at college. then with you, Charith, at CCC. But yeah, you're right. I mean, I think I was one of the few guys from that lot of players who we all played. Charith, I decided to retire from active sport at 21 because I felt that aviation and travel and tourism excited me a little bit more than normal. So yeah, I moved, and what really happened was half of my life perhaps was not in the country. I was overseas, doing my little rendezvous in and out all over the world. One of which was a big ambition of mine, so that someday I die, I wanted to have visited more countries than the age I died at. That helped because from probably what happens down in Los Angeles, right down to somewhere I say Mauritius or Sudan, where I've been to funny places. So yeah, so the vision expanded that way. Then what you couldn't take out of the body or what you couldn't take out of the DNA was perhaps sport. Still, I'd say any day, rugby union is my passion, my love, my love in sport. Having said that, when I got back to Colombo, the best club in the world, CCC, the Gymkhana, I used to go there to do my Sinhala Bat. They had a lunch. I don't know whether you remember that, Charith. It used to be 90 rupees in 2006 or something like that. And one day during a game on a Friday, I saw a young man. I think I need to mention his name. A young man called Shamara Kapukendra. He was 18, Charith, at that time, and he got like
Right.
100 at the CCC against, I think, NCC or SSC or something before lunch. And then I was thinking, oh shit! I mean, there's so much talent in this country. Do they have managers? Or do they have guys who look after their business interests? But at that time, there was almost no one other than one person who was doing very, very well. In fact, very professionally. I mean, the proof of the pudding is there to see. I wouldn't mention names, but you know who he produced, and good things came out of all that. Uh, I decided at that time that there's another thing I want to sort of impress upon the Sri Lankan public. Boa, you know what I'm going to talk about. The name or the brand player manager. Now, player manager is Ryan Giggs and Manchester United, where he plays and manages the team. The player manager concept in Sri Lanka, it's just a fictitious name. I don't want to call myself a player manager. I honestly believe I'm more a talent business management. So these talents, I mean, they need to be released without giving them the headaches of looking after their commercial lives. Their lifespans are short. Perhaps, Boa, I don't know if you're aware, Boa, but I do look after some sportsmen, some athletes, as well as I'm very much into entertainment. So, looking after some bands, some talented musicians who can sing pretty well, things like that. So I was just, what I'm trying to say here is, even if you look at the Oxford Dictionary, the name player manager is actually a guy who plays and manages the team. All right?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that is, I mean, the best example in the world is perhaps Ryan Giggs in Manchester United. He played 4 or 5 matches managing the team. Doesn't work. So I'm not in that business. I'm basically in the business of talent business, being a talent business manager. So what really happens at that stage is the talent is allowed to do what he knows best, which is exhibiting his talent. Now, whether that goes good or bad or halfway house, and the issues which come about with all that is a different story. So yeah, what's very important to know is that talents need to be left alone to do what they do the best, which is either get on stage and sing in front of 25,000 people, or get to a wedding and serenade a couple, or be at the base of the scrum and control the game, like Aaron will do for the Blacks, or my favorite Antoine, is it Antoine Dupont? Uh, by the way, Boa, I'm like Lebu, so I just need to remove this, but the Blues are my team.
Okay,
But I'm like
you look
French
good. It
man
looks
from
good
the
on you.
80s. I'm like French man from the 80s, from Les Cabura, Blanco to Sella to Didier Cambarapero to Eric Champ. So that's my craze. I have big fights with my friends. I know the French have never won anything, but on this,
No, they haven't actually. So
you
I'm
know,
glad
yeah,
you mentioned that point. Yeah.
but you're not going to forget that try from behind the goal, which Pierre Bembizier started, and Didier Kembaroporo. No, Philippe Saint Andre scored, or the try from Pell, was it in Brisbane? It's a French too.
No, the try from the end of the world, which was actually
end of the world.
Park against All Blacks. Well, what I want to mention is that was back in 1994, the last time French and All Blacks met in a significant competition. The French got a 65-point hiding. So I'd like to mention that as well.
But with Intermac and DuPont and those young 19ers coming in 2023, let's meet up in France and see how that goes. Yeah.
Ravi, basically, what you are saying is basically that you got into this business that or this this trade or industry or whatever what you call it, that there are so many player managers at the moment. So you want to add value to that when you see talent that you wanted to. I think you have a very clear. I don't know what the BOA perhaps will talk about it later. I know that you have a very clear policy, Rav. That you identify players at a very young age, whom you think that's talent identification as well. You invest on those players whom you think have a great future, and then you decide to work with them. At another level. Is that what you are trying to say when you saw Kamara Chapukedera as a 18-year-old playing cricket at CCC? Was Chamara your first signee? Or I can't recall.
Actually, Charith, I ended up managing CCC cricket. That was more passion, and for me, that's been the only club I know about in terms of cricket, because where rugby is concerned, my love and my loyalties are to the best rugby club in the world, which is the Havelocks. That's purely because it has produced.
Very
that's purely
arguable,
because it has produced my dad, who was a brilliant rugby player. Got concussed when he was 21, jumped over the wall, went and ended up at Coles playing cricket for 20 years. My uncle Maurice, who played for Sri Lanka and all Ceylon, one of the best. And then Len, who probably Boa you all might know. So Havelocks is rugby, cricket is CH. And I saw Kapu, and I thought he was an awesome talent. Perhaps he could have made a bigger brand for himself on the long term. But, Charith, in sport, you win some, you lose some. We have TJ Penanara, who comes and plays 20 minutes of the game, and he could play for any team in the world any day. So that happens. You win some, you lose some. So what I do is actually I identify whether it's a good singer or a very good band or an extremely good talented athlete, or even an opera singer. Now, I do manage one of Sri Lanka's, perhaps one of the only boys in Sri Lanka, an opera singer. Now, that's something I don't think anyone even know about. Young man who travels to Italy twice a year and sings opera. He's got a scholarship from the Italia dell'Opera. It's a different ballgame altogether. So, and I think Charith, the reason how I found it easier to do is because managing a big organization. I don't want to use brands where I was working, but you're looking after hundreds of staff, and then you've got to identify the correct person to sit in the correct state. You can't have the operational guy doing sales or the finance guy looking after the legal aspect of it. So then you got to play a lot of draft or chess or whatever you want to call, and you learn. So like I've made perhaps 95% mistakes in my life, and 5% of that has gone right for me. Similarly to any common sense life, so identifying the talent. Yes, you might agree with me. You probably make mistakes even 75% of that time, but overall, not just identifying the talent. I think you need to look at the real tenacity and get into the DNA of the player and see whether he or she wants to go the long haul. If the player is perhaps running behind money, I don't think that would be an issue for.
All right, Boa. Yeah, I think Ravi is, that, he suddenly, what's happening, Ravi? Okay, he just, I think his
You can
line just
say,
got stuck. Yeah, go ahead, Ravi.
I'm good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can probably suss the talent out very soon, whether the talent is actually for the long haul. Now, I generally work on a long haul base because my main story talent, Charith, was to make sure that the guys or the girls are good and done post retirement. Now, the span of an athlete, perhaps is shorter, but I manage one of Sri Lanka's number one bands, for example, and those guys can play till they're 50, 50, 55, 60, Cliff Richard, not as long as Cliff Richard could do, but some of the good bands like Zeppelin or Pink Floyd or whatever. So when you suss that out, you know that they're in for the long. Then you want to give them 200%. So the job is identifying them and then trying to drive them along. Perhaps you've also got to have some good debate. Now, I have some wonderful arguments, disagreements with the players. Try to like any manager have. The talent's personal business manager. You don't want to make sure that those guys go down the wrong track. Not just friendship, and spiritual, personal, material-wise. There's a lot, because they are good in what they do, and naturally they have wonderful egos. So you need to sort of handle it with care. But what we should do is allow them to do what they know and they can do best, and then be their mentor, godfather, perhaps the elder brother or the monitor in that class, telling them, look, this is how it goes. You're gonna burn your hand, or the shit is gonna hit the fan if you go this way.
All right, Ravi, what you're saying, what you're basically saying is, being a agent, or your business, partner, whatever.
Talent business manager.
Talent business manager. So what you are saying is just, that you play different roles, just not like, managing a player. Sometimes you play a fatherly role, that, a brotherly role, and perhaps a mentor. And, so you wear different hats, and it's a thankless job. I know that, I know what you guys go through, being a past team manager or whatever, and I have a close rapport with you. Boa, now with what Rav said, what are your sentiments? And, being you manage various rugby players, and a very daunting task, I would say, that you got a top, MMA guy managing, and that you did some brilliant work with him. What are your thoughts and what are your sentiments on the matter?
Yeah, look, first of all, I have to say I got into talent management and talent development and acquisition purely by accident. I was, once upon a time, this is going back 12, 13 years ago, I actually promoted boxing and mixed martial arts here in Auckland. And whilst doing that, I got to know some of these athletes, and I started building some really good relationships. And because I was an entrepreneur and a businessman, they came to me and said, hey, look, we need some help with our business affairs. Can you help? So it was purely accidental. And I was very fortunate that I was working, or I got to work with two really big names. One by the name of David Tua, who actually fought for a world title against Lennox Lewis, and of course Mark Hunt, big name in the UFC.
That's right.
So
yeah.
it was all about actually helping them focus on what their key task or tasks are. And my job was just, basically create the stage and make sure everything in the periphery was taken care of. So that meant, contracts, trading times, planning, getting a nutritionist, getting all that sorted out. So it's sort of like a chaperone, you're like a mentor, you're like a liaison, you're like a counselor sometimes, sometimes you're on the phone.
Yeah, many times. Most times.
You feel like you're having a therapy session, So it's a very interesting, intriguing sort of thing. So I guess with different hats you're wearing, with what Ravi was going over, it's mostly about talent identification, then developing that talent, acquiring that talent on your books, and giving them the best commercial possibility. So that's what it's all about. And along the way, you got to put them into certain boxes and certain pathways, like getting them to understand what financial literacy is, how they can invest in their future. So what actually gave me the acumen to do that, because I was a very successful exit entrepreneur quite early in my career, so I understood how the basics of the dynamics of business work. And of course, you have to understand at high performance level, athletes have to focus on their training, their nutrition, their sleep, and the psychology. Trying to worry about business affairs, that is very detrimental. All what happens is it takes away their valuable training time or resting time.
Sure.
So that is what we as talent managers or talent development and acquisition managers. The term I like to use is mentor, because there's a horrible connotation about this whole player agent, player manager. It kind of makes people feel like they're dealing with a used car salesman or insurance salesman. That is not what we do. That's almost like in Merchant of Venice, someone is after a pound of flesh. That is not what good talent acquisition managers or the common term player agents do. What they do is they nurture the talent, they grow the talent, they find innovative ways to make sure that they can optimize their talent. And it's about finding diamonds in the rough and just chipping those edges away, bringing it to that beautiful sense, and right at the end of the career, making sure that they can quit whilst on top, and they're set for life after their whatever chosen field they choose to move on from.
Very well. Well, words of wisdom, Boa. It's brilliant. I think what I gathered from what you said, Rav, I hope you'll enjoy. Boa said a very interesting
100%.
thing. That you literally take the pressure off an athlete, allow him to concentrate on what they do on field, and that you as a manager take the pressure off and you look after whatever that happens off the field, and then that give the player the comfort that his other interests are in safe hands. And that's what you said. That's a brilliant concept. I mean, I'm sure that lots of other managers will listen to it, and they will agree with what Boa said. To me, that thing 100%. Appeals. And before we move on, there are a couple of good day to Sanjeev Bernard Fernando, and he's a very knowledgeable and ardent follower and who knows a lot about cricket. And it says, I think the question is to Ravi. Dear Ravi, I'm not going to state the obvious and list all the current issues we face due to incompetent, unqualified and unethical cricket player agents in SL. Well, my question for you is, would you support regulating the player agent process? I'm not yet sure who the governing body should be, perhaps SLC, that only authorized individuals can act as agents in a structure where the core services and commission structure is clearly defined. Rav, do you want to talk about it before you respond to that? I think there is some speculation that I heard in the press that the SLC looking into this aspect, because there are so many factors coming in, whether it's positive or negative. There are various things happening about the player management issue that we don't know at some point whether Sri Lanka Cricket will want to take over the management. I don't know whether it's ethical. You boys can talk about it, how the other bodies operate, and whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, because how it's going to work Sri Lanka Cricket being the main employer of all this, whether they have resources and the ability to look after all their individual interests. And as we rightly spoke, that what we said, it's a matter of taking the pressure off the players, not to create additional pressure on the players. So I don't know how the players will respond, giving more responsibility to Sri Lanka Cricket. Here, I'm not criticizing or trying to undermine anyone, but these are just my thoughts. Ravi, going back to that question, what are your thoughts about what Sanjeev said?
Charith, your teammate and my under 12 time fierce competitor, whom the whole of Sri Lanka and perhaps the whole world whole world respects, Arjuna. During his tenure as a president, I remember Aju one day calling me and wanting to know whether we should have a player management association reporting registered with Sri Lanka Cricket. I suggested to him that we should do it as soon as possible. And actually, Arjuna wanted to know whether I could, help him to set this all up. I'm 100% for the fact that the agents need to be registered with Sri Lanka Cricket. Charith, let me tell you something. If I want one of my players to play for, any county or any any sort of big district, so what should I say, club cricket or something serious in any part of the world, I've got to route it through a registered agent in that country. Now in Sri Lanka, we don't have that. And if we can start that yesterday, it's good for all, because it's very easy for people to say this, that, and that about the players, but if about the player agents or the player managers. But if these blokes are registered with Sri Lanka Cricket, which I believe is absolutely prudent, and I think I need to support Sanjeev on this, well, we need to do this yesterday. We've been talking about this, and I think we've been basically keeping this on the slow burner for too long. For example, if I need to make sure that, say, one of my players, Dimut, I'll give you a case in point. If I need to send him to go play for Hampshire, which I was trying to do just before the World Cup, he was appointed as captain in 2019. But my routing, my entire process was through an ECB approved agent. I can't deal directly. We don't have that in Sri Lanka, and I just believe that it's a simple process. We need to do that.
Right. Great stuff, Ravi. So basically. Yeah, you agree that,
well, we should be registered with Sri Lanka Cricket. Very simple.
Goa, you agree with that?
Look, there's two sides to the story. With organizations who actually know what they're doing, where they have clear systems and processes, absolutely. For example, I work with a couple of Australian competitions where you must be an accredited player agent, and they have very strict systems and process. They work really well, and that allows for example, players to swap clubs in the middle of the season during the transfer window, and it's very clear, it's very transparent, everything is set out. The players feel a sense of security, the agents feel a real sense of security. The other side of the coin is, if you're dealing with an organization, I can't comment about SLC because I don't know what it's like. If they don't have clear-cut systems and processes, then I think it's a ridiculous idea. The reason is, to me, all it does is an incompetent organization who have no idea. They're telling us how to make a living. As far as that goes, that's not going to work. So what needs to happen is the organization or official player management association or a union, whatever it may be, is put in place. And you need to have some very clear-cut systems and processes in place so that the whole process becomes nice and smooth. Otherwise, what's going to do is it's just going to add more layers of work, more layers of incompetence, more layers of unproductive hours, and that needs to be ironed out right from the beginning. So if I were in your situation, Ravi, what I would do is I'd be proactive. I'd take the bull by the horns. I'd actually put in place a structure and propose it, saying, hey guys, look, I've done all the hard work for you. You don't need to think. Take this, cut, paste, and let's just do this. And that's probably the best way forward. So it really depends on the organization, and it really depends on the capacity and the capability of, it's what I call the C&C index, capacity of the people and the capability of who are actually running this organization. Otherwise, all it will do is just create more unnecessary headaches. So I hope that gives everyone some perspective.
Yeah, I think that answers. Hang on a sec, Ravi. I'm sorry. I cut you halfway through when you were talking this. I think this perhaps answers Sanjeev's next question, which is on the screen right now. Here is to ensure prospective agents are qualified, prepared, trained, educated properly to serve in the best interest of players in a structured and professional environment. Yeah, that's exactly what we spoke about. So you boys basically that you have no objection, just to streamline or to have a proper system, and that's the way forward. We all agree on that.
Yeah, never had Charith. I never had. I think we have had this chat offline. where I've been always saying that this needs to be a little bit more professional in terms of. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not talking about anyone doing unprofessional things. I honestly don't believe any other current uh, cricket player managers are doing anything wrong, but I'm sure it will help all of them to clear their brand and the brand per se for all of us. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes I don't spend too much of time worrying about what's written on social media.
Yeah.
I like to listen to what Mickey said something about social media the other day. I was listening to one of his interviews. So the idea is people will then assume, presume, and all that. And I mean, from Charith, it's like this. I mean, if you talk to Lionel Messi, now he's got his own manager, right? But
Yeah.
that doesn't mean that he can talk to Argentine Football Association. He's got nothing to do with Argentine Football Association. His manager, perhaps the manager may be registered as an agent there. What we do also, Charith, is important. That my job. If you're talking about in terms of the cricketers, Charith, what a Sri Lankan player does with Sri Lanka cricket is totally his business. We player talent managers can't get involved in that
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, it's an employer-employee situation. But
Yeah.
if I'm talking to a county, if I'm talking to a franchise, if I'm talking to a brand, whether it's here or in New Zealand or in Somalia, then that's where the talent player manager comes in, and we try to look after the interests. But what is important to know is that the talent player managers have absolutely no right to talk to Sri Lankan cricket or
Is Ravi breaking up? Boa, can you hear Ravi?
I cannot. Look, I'm just gonna.
Yeah. Just before we move on, the Neil Diza, I don't know where he's watching from on YouTube. I don't see the YouTube. Yes, you can send us a question. I can see the questions, but I'm unable to answer you or write to you, while the show is on. But I can see what you're writing. So if you have any questions, please forward it. I'd love to answer to that. And Nalaka says, hi Charith and Ravi. Most of the current players are not able to communicate well in post-match presentations and media interactions. What is player agent's responsibility in this regard? Yes, we'll go in there. And quickly, Sanji, bottom line, we need to ensure not every Tom, Dick, and Harry should be able to represent our national assets. There must be a process to ensure qualification, standardization, and governing of agents. Yeah, we'll get into that. We'll get into that. We'll decide who should be a manager and who shouldn't. Which is $1 million question, I believe. That who can and who cannot. Just to answer quickly, Nalaga Disanayaka, boys, is that your? I mean, Boa, you probably will not have a scenario that in New Zealand, because the medium that you converse, that's in English, and everybody speaks English, and there is no problem. A player in a post-match presentation, presenting himself, that there is no problem. But in the subcontinent, or perhaps if you're coming from a nation that English is not the first language, is going to be the problem. But I mean, you look at footballers. Correct me if I'm wrong, gentlemen. When it comes to football or athletics or any other sport, I mean, language is never a barrier. That you always, that you can converse with any language that you're comfortable with. There is no hard and fast rule that you have to talk only in English. But the only advantage would be, depends on which market you have in mind and whom you're trying to attract. So if you have the ability to talk to them directly, other than through a mediator, I guess that it adds value. So for a player, as they go along, how they develop themselves, language skills is part of like anything else. I mean, just as progression in life, that like just your game, uplift your whatever education, your bilingual skills or whatever, that you language skills and your common etiquette, day-to-day etiquette, that's part of the whole thing. And if a manager can directly influence, I suppose you can. I mean, you can, that you can help a player that to find some sort of that assistance and guidance. You can provide that. But I guess at the end of the day, it's all up to the player how he wants to perceive the matter and how we want to uplift himself. I don't know what you guys think.
Look, Charith, I'm just going to interject here. Based on what I'm hearing here, and I'm going to try and correlate to what Sri Lanka cricket is doing. I think, Ravi, someone like yourself, you've got a tremendous opportunity here to actually set up a blueprint or a template and actually help Sri Lanka cricket get the house in order as far as managing players. Now, one thing I have to say is with player management per se, with the contracts, it depends on the legality of how a player is treated in a contract. Are they an employee or they're a contractor? My experience has always told me that going as a freelance contractor, there is more provisions for flexibility as well as payments, endorsements, so on and so forth. But that changes from territory to territory. And also it changes from sport code to sport code. For example, here in New Zealand with rugby, there is the New Zealand Professional Players Association, which is a recognized union, and all the contracts are centralized through them. But then you look at the other spectrum, which is professional boxing. Each and every individual or fighter is treated as a contractor. So they are a business themselves. So that will have ramifications on the tax they pay, what their contracts are, how they can talk to mainstream sponsors with endorsements. For example, for a big payday fight, you could have Omega on your trunks. So your trunks itself could be worth a six-figure sum. And how much of money that goes, to the kitty, what gets paid out in tax, all that differs. So I guess the point I'm trying to make, and I can see a lot of questions from the audience, is, what is the regulation required? Because there isn't a clear-cut template in correlation to Sri Lanka cricket. I think, Ravi, this gives you someone like yourself a real opportunity to actually draw up a template and present it to them and say, hey, look, guys, I've done all the hard work. You don't need to think. Let's help each other here. And of course, if you can actually get the players to make this a player-driven situation where they're actually saying, look, this is actually going to benefit us. And if you do this with honesty and transparency, which I know you do, Ravi, this is going to be a huge game changer as far as how the sport and the organization which controls it in the island nation goes forward.
Well said, Boa. Ravi, just before you answer, mate, that's, I think, Bonnie, good to have you, Bonnie, DJ Bonnie, it's just, it's always an ardent supporter of the program, and nice to have Bonnie, in the mix. Bonnie, tricky question, and I knew this, question is going to come up at some point. It's a Boa. It's it's just a burning issue in the country. It's not a burning issue. I mean, it's a discussion that is going on, and perhaps you could sort of say it's an allegation and or just rumors. Perhaps public opinion, whatever you may call it. That's the. There is a belief, I would say, that the player managers could influence the team selections. Now, that is exactly what Bonnie is saying here. Hi, Charith. Good topic. One of the biggest allegations, there you go, going around Sri Lanka cricket is how player managers can influence with team selections. Is this really happening? Why has SSC allowed this to happen? The second question, I also personally agree that this should be streamlined. Boa, you spoke about it. And no one better than Ravi to take the lead role. Let us put Ravi on the spot. He's the man who's managing so many leading players, currently. And I was going to ask you this question, Ravi, and at some point, in a different way.
I'm actually the most disappointed because my number one player, the captain, Sri Lankan captain, is not playing one.
Why do you think? I asked you to come on the show because you are the most controversial man at the moment, the most discussed topic, in Sri Lanka at the moment. Ravi, seriously, mate, can you influence a player's presence in the national team? And also that my question to you. Boa, this is a very tricky one, mate. That say that you are managing number one and number two players who are equally fighting for either for the captaincy or for the same place. How would you support? How would you handle a situation where both players are managed by you and fighting for one place? And how would you handle that? Do you completely isolate yourself and allow the selection process to take to due course, or you gentlemen That's what the Bonnie is asking. Is there any way that you could influence, or you have your personal favorites, or how do you handle it?
I'll let Ravi answer the first question, and then I'll
Yeah.
follow.
Yeah, Ravi.
Okay, Charith. Basically, if I read between the lines, I think BP is talking about player managers. I'm not a player manager. Ryan Giggs is a player manager. When you play in the same team and manage, that's a player manager. I'm I'm more player talent manager. Okay, let me put it this way. Charith, for starters, if I could have been so powerful, then Dimut Karnath would have been still playing one-day cricket. Number one. That probably has to be the punchline on my response. Number two is, whatever happens in Boa, quite different in New Zealand, because there are very powerful player associations. New Zealand, in South Africa, Australia. In Sri Lanka, we don't have what you call a player association to begin with. We do have, but that's not recognized by Sri Lanka cricket as a date. That's nothing to do with me. So what it doesn't allow a player manager to do, or a player talent manager to do, is to have a direct link with Sri Lankan cricket or the national board. So I honestly don't know from where this is concocted, saying that any agent or manager who represent. I mean, I don't manage. I by chance perhaps manage probably the top, maybe one or two of the top guys at the moment, but my numbers are much less. Charith, as you know, I'm not only doing cricket management, athlete management, I'm into other talent management businesses as well. So honestly, I don't believe it happens. I'm speaking on behalf of myself, as well as the other dudes and the boys, and if there are any females who are doing player management in Sri Lanka. I don't think that happens, because are you trying to tell me that whoever Sri Lanka cricket has as a head of selection or in the selection committee is going to listen to some arcade player manager and work according to that? I don't think so. Charith, you've been in the system. All these guys who have been appointed by Sri Lanka cricket are basically respectful people. I don't believe they would really sell themselves and listen to a player manager. I mean, no way. That is not on. Perhaps a lot of people imply that, right? I think if I speak on behalf of the guys who are in the fraternity at the moment, I honestly don't believe it's done that way. At the end of the day, there are 1, 2, 3, or 4 selectors and Sri Lanka cricket. And the other thing is, we as player business managers, our job role doesn't entail that. That doesn't matter to us, because their dealings are directly with the employer. I mean, that's how it works. Quite different to if it was Fallon Andrea, whom she is on screen with Charith, another common friend of ours, Sohan. That is a different story. I will work on behalf of Fallon for everything. But when you are an employer of a particular organization, the talent business manager in Sri Lanka, in a Sri Lankan sense, not in a overseas sense, has no right to talk to Sri Lanka cricket. They have absolutely no right. So that's where it stands. So I think, Bonnie, I honestly don't believe that it happens. It could be implied that it happens. I'll be the saddest if why it doesn't happen, because I mean, come on, my own man Dimut, whom I would have loved to have had in the side, is not currently good enough to play white ball cricket. And that's the policy of Sri Lanka cricket, where they're looking at 2023 and a younger generation. Life changes, Charith. I mean, we've got to accept these things. So coming back to your story, I think you try to imply, okay, Ravi, you're managing Dimut, you're managing Kusal. Could there be a conflict? No, it doesn't happen like that. Because it's my duty to tell Dimut, okay, Dimut, this is it. I think at the moment you've been considered more as a test cricketer, which we all know he is very well. I mean, Charith, when Dimut was brought back to Sri Lanka cricket in 2019 to come and captain the ODI side, he had not played ODI cricket for 4 years, right? So from all of a sudden, then was it because of me that he was appointed as a captain? No, he doesn't. And now I see a lot of people saying that Kusal Janit was appointed because of me. No way. That's because Sri Lanka cricket and the hierarchy wanted to go 2023 towards this younger generation, which I think is a very good thing. You can see the tenacity of the current team, Dasun and the small and the young boys. I mean, yeah, okay, you can argue saying India had a relatively younger side, but at the end of the day, our team's also young and they're performing. The tenacity is there. It's like in a company, in an organization, right? I mean, the young blood comes. We all have a shelf life. So I don't think that matters. And if you're very, very professional, you need to convince the cricketer or the athlete. It's the same thing, when Richie Macau knows it's time to go. We all know that Macau can go on for another 2 years, even though he played a final with a broken ankle. But when the time is right, shelf life, you got to go. So I don't think, Charith, I honestly negate that thought process. I don't buy that story.
What your thoughts, Boa?
Yeah, look, one thing I have to say is I find it very interesting that the player talent manager or the talent identification or whoever's looking after that said player doesn't have a direct link to, in this instance, Sri Lanka cricket. Because me personally, I think that needs to change. Because again, if it is a case of communication, the whole purpose of having a manager is to make sure to set the stage right so that the player can go and focus on his or her core task, which is to actually play the sport. So again, this comes back to what I said, Ravi. It's a case of understanding the blueprint and making those tweaks. And this might be one of those changes, which I go back to what I said, is going to be a game changer. Because one thing I can say is about Sri Lanka cricket, if they keep continuing to do the same thing, they will get the same outcome. Okay? So if you want to change the outcome, you have to change your activity or change what you're doing. So all these little aspects of it, i.e. where who talks to what, and maybe, creating a union for the professional players who are contracted so that they will have accredited agents or managers who will look after their books, and then putting in place a template or a blueprint on who talks to who and how it happens, what gets documented, might be the way forward. And maybe these are some of the shortcomings, which is actually what's holding this process back.
Well said. Just to on a lighter way, Ravi, just you said that you couldn't. You spoke about Falan. We talk about that. Now that from cricket you have moved on into various other ventures. Managing professional artists and entertainment. Falan is one, and you could see in the picture our good friend Dema D Zone. You manage D Zone as well. And I think
it's not really an easy task, Charith, because you'll have some of the athletes calling you between 9 and 5, a more decent time, and then you'll have the musicians. You'll have to spend time with your talents, your entertainers, from perhaps 9 in the night to 4 in the morning. Thank God for C19. Life is a little bit easier these days, and then you have your entertainers sleeping during the day. And you have your cricketers, perhaps sometimes up late nights as well, asking you to do this or make sure that this bank payment has been sorted out, or these payments have to be done for their bills at home, or as Boa said, Charith, our role is a funny role. There's no, because it's multiple, no defined tasks. There's absolutely no defined task. I mean, I have booked hotels. I have gone and made sure that their bestmen's clothes are ready. I've introduced the bridesmaids to some seamsters to get those things done. It's just not only cricket. Simple thing like I'm a little bit more tighter on their health and all things like I'll make sure that they go every 6 months and make sure that their teeth's done, trying to convince one of these cricketers or athletes or musicians to say, look, you got to go and get your teeth done. You can't get a toothache in the midst of a tour. I'll tell you a lovely story, Charith. I think the audience might like to know this. Dhananjaya was in New Zealand. And discovered some cavity had come off the night before a test match in New Zealand. Boa, you might be knowing He's a classmate of mine, Dr. Dilruk Vijayaratna. He's a dentist. He's got a couple of dental surgeries. And, the day before a test match, this boy is in pain. So you need to get someone and get sorted. And he was picked up in a second surgery. They were sorted out. He played the game the next morning. So, I mean, there's a lot. It's another very, very important goal I'd like them to do, and they do. A lot of the boys do is meditation. I have grown with these boys. Some of the cricketers have with me now probably 10. Dimut's with me for about 14 years, for about 10 years, and Anjay for about 8 years. So for me, putting them on the right track sometimes can be, obviously you would. I mean, I would be sort of bullshitting if I say they would not upset the fact that he's not playing white ball cricket anymore. But I think you need to be realistic here. You look at the bigger picture. Okay, why is Sri Lanka cricket what? And then we need to guide him. I mean, they another 27 test matches in his life, as far as I'm concerned. That is 3 against Bangladesh team, another 12 next year, 22, and another 12 the year after, minimum. So, I mean, as a shelf life, cricket is changed. Charith, the cricket you and I played, and the cricket played today. The rugby, boy, you and I knew when we were in school, and the rugby played today is completely different. I know that if we were not involved in the sport in this moment, we would have not known jack about how the sport is managed, played, and how players behave, and what it's all about today. Right, Bob?
Yeah, I agree. I mean,
probably in your business.
Yeah, I mean, look, the game's changed a lot, and particularly with the younger athletes, and this is something which I'll get on to later on. I fully agree. I mean, the way the world has changed, the way some of these young athletes, they get their information, how they portray themselves to the world, what their engagement level, what their attention span. So I think, we as a older generation, and particularly I can see a lot of questions on the chat around discipline. This is the big word, discipline. Ladies and gentlemen, you have to understand the way we were disciplined once upon a time is not going to work how some of these younger kids these days growing up, because they have a number of distractions. The technology is one of them. Their attention span is really short. So how they get coached, we have to understand the resource in front of us. So we have to change our methods of coaching and education accordingly. And I think because there isn't a good enough understanding about how those methods are, this whole misunderstanding about, expecting players to, be seated in one place for 23 hours and do nothing else and be perfect, that world doesn't exist anymore. It's just a, it's a load of rubbish. Okay, so the best way to break through this is to actually educate people on forums like this, where we have to understand what is modern day high performance all about. How does it work? What does a high performance athlete have to do to get to that level of high performance? And what are some of the physiological, that's the physical requirements, and of course the psychological stuff. Because you have to understand, most of the older generation, the only thing they've ever been taught, if you want to get better at sports, is to work out physically. So they've never been taught about the psychological side. And I find this with some of the coaches in the modern day as well. They coach their athletes to be physically strong. But soon as they're put under pressure mentally, they don't have the tools, or they don't have the capacity or the capability to deal with that situation. So we're here now, and this is what's causing this big ruckus. So soon as someone steps out of line, all the hypocrites jump on the bandwagon and said, wow, when we were at blah, blah, blah. Guys, it's a different world. The way people are taught, the way people learn, the way people interact with the rest of the world has changed. So trying to, apply stuff from 25 years ago, it's never going to work. And that has a direct correlation to the outcome and the results we're seeing. So long as we don't understand that as a wider audience, all we're going to be doing is banging our head up against a wall. So I just want to make that very clear. Sorry, Ravi, I was just
True,
cutting
true.
into your time.
No, it's brilliant. I was
I'm
going
with
to.
you. Charith,
I was going to come into that. Ravi, Ravi,
Charith.
just a minute. I think I think the question Bonnie asked you, basically, I mean, and again, I'm just trying to keep, things, in a lighter vein. If you were given a choice, to certain rock concert that, you got to make a decision between Dema and Fallon, whom would you are given only one choice, whom would you decide between Dema and Fallon? I think that's what Bonnie asked you as a DJ, like, as a player manager, if ever come a situation, what would you do? Can you take sides, or just leave it for the process to take place? What would you do?
No, Chara. It's like this. Damien and D-Zone is a band. Fallon is an individual operator. Of course, Fallon does sing with Damien as well. For example, I've got a gig next week, but Fallon's not singing with Damien. But the week after, we are at cinema at the library. You can come and listen to Fallon backed by Damien and the band.
Oh, wow.
So it's two different issues, yeah.
Brilliant. Just quickly, before you move on, Dr.
I just want to catch on what Boa said about life and how life has changed.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if your dad and my dad ever thought that Charith Senanayaka, Ravi De Silva, and Boa Athu, based in New Zealand, would be talking at this point in time after one or two drinks at the Coles or at one of the clubs, they would have thought we are actually bonkers, right? That's one thing I want to remind everyone. Number two, if ever any one of us in this forum are married and they've got kids, and unfortunately or fortunately, if your kids have their own rooms, please find out when the kids last came to have a chat with your parents, or when you had dinner together. Life has changed. They are busy with their work. They are studying. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I have my youngest who's like studying 15 hours a day. She'll come out, and that's their priority. So, Charith, the world has changed, and as Boa, I'm 100% with Boa, and we can't say this happened 25 years ago. It doesn't happen even in Thailand. If there's a message to be done, it's a WhatsApp. You're not going to call and say, okay, practice tomorrow. We are having this gig in New York on 42nd. It doesn't happen. It's just a text, and you're supposed to have a look at it. So if you don't look at it, and you get late to go for practice, if you don't report to the board at 6 o'clock in the morning for practice, you get fined depending. Charith, you're the one who collects the money. You get fined depending on how late you are for the practice. That's on WhatsApp. So you can't say, oh, sorry, my battery was down. Life has changed. So I think we need to move with those timings, and we've got to be realistic of life. I don't believe that we can be who we are forever and ever. Amen. As I said before, Boa and I, probably you included, Charith, we can afford to speak a little bit because we are in the zone at the moment.
Right. I know where it's leading up to all this talk and all these questions coming up about disciplinary issues and how important discipline is. I think another burning question right now is like we all know, it's no secret that 3 or 4 players, unfortunately, that there was a mishap in the last tour to UK. And they were found guilty, and certain action was taken against the players. And I think the whole cricketing fraternity is divided. The course of action taken against the 3 players, some felt that it's insufficient, some thought it's extreme, and someone said, "Come on, guys, let's get on with it." You as managers, how would you think the action taken by Sri Lanka cricket? I think initially it became a bit of a joke. I mean, the disciplinary committee appointed, they recommended a 2-year ban, which I thought was ridiculous. That was my personal view. And then it was, now it has brought down to a 1 year with a 6 months ban in domestic cricket. Gentlemen, your views, is it justified, the ban imposed on these players based on what actually transpired? Now, you gentlemen said, don't look at things how it happened 25 years ago. Things have changed. We live in a different scenario, in a new world, and it's surrounded by a pandemic. It's driven by technology. and so on and so forth. And the action taken against three, the key players in the Sri Lanka team. How would you see it, Bo? I think you were very critical on that, and let me go to, because Ravi, it can be a little sensitive for Ravi, because the people might say that.
I'll answer it, Charith. I can answer it.
Brilliant. Okay, Bo, what are your thoughts on the disciplinary action taken against these three players?
Yeah, look, I've read on this, I've followed this, and I think it was 1 year, 25,000 US, wasn't it? So,
yeah.
Look, this was for a bubble breach, wasn't it? A biological bubble breach.
Yeah.
That these players up, and so they hadn't actually broken any laws per se. It was just that they breached
the team
internal
laws.
policy.
Probably the team laws. Yeah, the team
so
laws.
It was internal policy. Okay, so so my question to those who say it's not enough, I mean, so what is enough? 250 years and $2 million? I mean, come on, this is utterly ridiculous. To ban three grown-up men who, on their own volition, violated a team policy. And guys, let's get one thing straight. Everyone who's calling for blood and their head speaks as if they are Nelson Mandela or Mother Teresa and these perfect human beings who have never breached anything in their life. I mean, come on, that's nonsensical. And from Sri Lanka cricket or whoever, whatever, if they're so unhappy about it, rather than suspending them, all they have to do is just tear their contract up. It's pretty simple. And then they have to find alternate means. This to me sounds like scapegoating and just trying to use this as a deflection mechanism. And the reason I say this is probably not their first transgression. There would have been a culture, because experience tells me these are telltale signs that there would have been a culture where they do this sort of thing. So if people in positions who are supposed to put them right and manage them and actually enforce all these internal policies, had they done their job, this would have probably not come out looking this bad. So this was more so just to appease the lynch mob, to say that, hey, look, we're taking discipline seriously. And guys, come on, this is 2021, right? These are grown-up men. They're not kids. To me, this whole scenario, to get to this stage, is utterly nonsensical. So I think banning players for 1 year, fining them 25,000, it's just not going to work. What really needs to happen is you need to educate these young men and say, look, guys, these are your professional obligations, and it's continuously, it has to be drummed in. And this comes back to what I spoke about, mental skills. You actually need to sit these guys down, run them through indoctrination, have staged or cyclic inductions, and say, this is what we require you guys to do. I mean, if I was in a position where I had to actually mentor these guys, that's what I'd be doing. I'd be keeping it really simple, saying, guys, this is what the desired outcome is, and this is what we need to do. This is how we do it, and actually educate these guys. So I think this whole situation is nonsensical, and it just shows how dysfunctional whatever this process is.
Well said, mate. What do you recommend? What should be the disciplinary action taken against the players in your thoughts?
I think, look, they just need to be fined, and they need to be sat down and have a regular program where they actually taught on what the expectations and professional obligations are, and they need to engage in an activity where they actually prove to their teammates and that contracted group of players that they've actually made a willful change, and they're not playing this whole shadow game where they're pretending that they've changed, and make a positive contribution. But probably what I'm saying is not a popular opinion, because I doubt with organizations like Sri Lanka Cricket there are mechanisms and tools to deal with this sort of thing. Because to do this, you actually need people who understand the process, and you need to be able to actually educate these youngsters.
You got it, Yamit. What you're saying is earn the respect and the place back. You have done something wrong, and that's things happen in life. We are all human, and well, we are not here to eliminate.
Because I mean, if these guys went and punched someone and beat someone up, then what's the punishment? What do we look at? 55,000 years and $10 million in fines?
True.
Come on, really? It's ridiculous. This is the most nonsensical thing I've heard in a really long time.
I'm with you, boy. Ravi, your thoughts on the matter?
Charith, it's actually a catch-22, like you said, because I'm really not, I'm not too much involved in the issue in terms of who's been docked as we speak. You know, Charith, for me, talents, whether it was Benjamin Franklin or Isaac Newton or Muhammad Ali or Elvis Presley or even rest in peace Schumacher or Ayrton Senna, you know, these guys are, in my books, they're freaks. Am I right, Boa? They're freaks. They're talents which, I mean, even Bradman, right, or Maradona or Michael Jackson, they do different things. So that's one part of the story. Having said that, Charith, some of us have worked commercial. We worked for 30, 40 years of our life, and we signed what you call a letter of appointment, which specifically says this is possible, this should not be done, etc., etc. So I think the boys perhaps should stick to their contracts and work according to what the contracts basically stipulate and imply. Not necessarily to the boys who are involved now, but in all. Bottom line, utterly untimely, perhaps unfortunate. But at the end of the day, I mean, we all make mistakes. I do, and I'm sure I'll keep making mistakes, not just commercially, even personally. Hopefully, pray to God that I'll make less mistakes than I do correct things. I don't believe we need to castrate them too much. I fully with Boa, where we probably should counsel them and guide them along. But remember one thing: you are going to have this situation, not just at Sri Lanka cricket, with talents, with these world famous people. I mean, we don't consider these guys world famous, but they are world famous. They are. I'm not saying they are Muhammad Ali, but they are as like Jeffrey Archer, or you know, they are susceptible to make this mistake. So where do we support them and guide them along is the question.
Yep. So gentlemen, what you're saying basically, yeah.
Stick to your contract.
And get on with it.
You've signed a document.
Yeah.
Okay. Once you sign a document, stick to that. That's it. I mean, what else? But please don't. I mean, just give
castigate them for life. You know, give them a chance. You know, from a human point of view. Right? I hear you loud and clear. Address it. Move on. Doctor, good to have you on the show. Talent identification is an established scientific approach in sports. It's based on identifying the genetic makeup of a particular sport. But from that point onward, there is a long-term process in grooming our players, achieve his best. Correctly said, they should be given managerial skill other than their brilliance in sports. So it's the holistic approach. Absolutely. You know, that's what it's all about. I think we spoke about it in brief. Dr. Asela is another renowned physician. I think, Bo, I don't know whether you watched the episode with Dr. Asela. Absolutely brilliant, mate. You know, if anyone, I think one of the best doctors I have met in the country, you know, when it comes to sports injuries, so on and so forth. Rohan Vijay, former old Joe, good to have him on the show. You know, senior, I think this is Rohan Vijay, senior. Adding on to every single word with my dear buddy Ravi Diesel, a bundle of energy on the mic. Ravi, your charismatic honesty, integrity, and assertiveness is coming well. And Charith, okay.
Take that from one of the best St. Josephs they've ever produced, huh?
Yeah, food for thought, Boa, fully agree. Ravi in Samarkand, all the way from Aussie, mate. Good to have you on the show. Ardent supporter, I think, you know, earlier in the day, he wrote a brilliant piece, you know, addressing to both of you guys. You know, it's always his guidance and support is appreciated. Good to have you. Aruna, so are you? Who else is Leslie Manikam? Good. Oh, damn, you know, all from Aussie, mate. You know, all down under. I wonder where the Sri Lankans are. I'm sure that, as usual, that, you know, they must have had a heavy lunch perhaps to couple that with a few beers, and they all must be fast asleep, and probably waking up just now for the second round for the day, being on a Sunday. That's well said, Boa. Seems like no one has that conversation with the concerned cricketers before punishing them. Well, it's another whole subject that we need to talk about, because anyone had a
one thing I want to say and point out is these guys, they are byproduct of the environment they're in. And unless see, the most important thing in to be a professional, first and foremost, you have to behave in a certain way. Okay, and that behavior needs to be taught, and that behavior needs to be quite deliberate. So over a period of time, when you behave in a certain way, it gets hardwired into you. So it becomes what you call a soft skill. Okay? So with these younger athletes, as I said, distractions. Now when we were youngsters, there was no Facebook or Twitter to come and bleat or talk about your social life or take a nice photo or put it on Instagram. None of that was there. The reality is, the very same people who are complaining that these kids are spending too much time on this are the very same people who are spending too much time watching exactly what they do. So it's a very hypocritical stance.
And criticizing them too.
And criticizing them too. So we have to understand this is the world we live in. And then from a managerial point of view, we have to actually understand, right, how do we then educate these guys to strike a balance so that it doesn't interfere with their core tasks? So because all these people who are also constantly on Facebook, Instagram, and whatever the heck they are constantly seeing this, and because they can't do it themselves, they're the first ones to criticize these youngsters.
Sure.
Because they're out there doing it. And then this becomes like, trailer trash talk show chitter chatter, where they, it just becomes gossip, and then one thing just gets on top of the other. So, it varies in different degrees and different cultures. It's the same all over the world. It's just no difference. One thing I have to say is, and Charith, I don't know whether you can actually show these videos, something which is really important that we have to understand in this day and age is attention span. Now, I'll give you a really simple example. When we were teenagers, some of the action movies we watched, I mean, all you guys can recall Rambo, Sylvester Stallone, right? So, and everyone watching, do yourself a favor. This is a really good social experiment. Just go and get a 15-second clip on YouTube from any random Rambo movie clip from the 70s or 80s. And take 15 seconds and actually count within those 15 seconds how many screen changes you have. How many screen changes you have. And then take another movie from the recent past. Like, for example, my son and my daughter, they watch Twilight. I personally think it's a crap action story, but hey, I'm not from that generation. So you take 15 seconds from Twilight and count how many screen changes there are. Chances are, it's to be fact, Rambo versus Twilight, Rambo might have maybe 2, maybe 3 screen changes, whereas Twilight can have 12, maybe 20. So the reality is, this is the world these younger kids live in, and this is the world they're brought up in. Their attention span is that much shorter. So us as managers and coaches, educators, directors of coaching, whatever the heck you want to call them, they have to understand this. So trying to coach these kids, teach these kids and discipline these kids as if they were Rambo is never going to work. It's never going to work. And all you're going to find is they will rebel against it. And that is a failure of us as managers, coaches, whatever the heck you want to call them, until people actually understand that this is never going to change. So if SLC or whoever is out there watching this, if you don't know what to do, you give me a call. I don't come cheap. My time is very expensive. But I tell you what, I'll put you guys right and you can thank me later. This is not rocket science. This is actually understanding coach development, coach education, actually understanding the resources you're playing with. Fortunately for me, I had the opportunity to learn from some exceptional people who I really look up to. they identified this early, and it just really opened my eyes. Now, the reason I'm saying this, particularly to our audience, is, my eyes are too open to neglect this and bury my head under the sand. So hopefully this little spiel I'm throwing at will educate you guys out there and just get you thinking. The reason why some of these younger players behave the way they do is because we live in a very fast-paced world. And this whole thing is misunderstood. So we need to put things into place that it can be absorbed and adapted, and we can get the best possible outcome.
Well said, Bo. And a big hi to Carol. Carol, good to have you on the show. Carol says, nonsense, no beauty sleep. Watching you guys. Thank you, Carol, for your support. Leslie, deeper sympathies, mate. Didn't realize that you guys are on a 24-hour lockdown in Sydney. So hang in there, stay safe, and get yourself vaccinated. I think that's the way to go about. Listening to Bo, it seems it is the coach and managers that do need retraining. Yes, we all need. We as Bo rightly said that we live in a constant changing world. Everything that we thought we knew has changed. From over a period of time. It's a constant. The life moves on. It's a constant process that we need to learn from players as well. The players need to to learn from us. It's an ongoing process. It's a never-ending process. And how you handle players. Just before we went to Boa, like Ravi said, a very interesting thing that what perhaps Ravi could say that managing, say for an example, the national team. If you talk about, I think I've spoken about it before in other shows. They're all freaks. Yes, Ravi, I agree with you. A normal human being cannot play. That you cannot represent your country. And if you are normal, that you may not go far. That's right. You would not be successful to a guy is like if you give me the names KJP, he's very different to a normal human being. Sanat Jayasuriya, they all had unbelievable abilities, uncanny human abilities. That that's why Boris Becker, Boa, and that apparently his heart rate was below 30. That kind of that's what he meant by freaks. So my point is that how you manage this group of people, you need to understand them, what they are and what they are capable of. You cannot handle them like normal human beings. They are an exceptional group of people. So sometimes you need exceptional ways to handle them. You need to look at it in a humanly way, and a sympathetic way, and a practical way, and you got to do the right thing. I think you cannot. Sometimes things go wrong. You can't bring in judgment for wrong reasons. It can't be political, or it can be anything otherwise. It has to be the right thing. If someone has done wrong, correct them. Life must go on. I think that's where I think we stop talking about this. What transpired, as Ravi rightly said, unfortunate and untimely. That should not have happened. It happened. Let's face it. Let's move forward. Let's try and avoid such incidents in the future. And then we quickly move on to there are other things that you guys wanted to talk about. One thing is that one person, Coastal Fernando, they asked me about a selfish athlete syndrome that people don't understand. As managers, how do you address it? People want to know what it's all about. And suddenly, Ravi, to tell you, that I realized, that perhaps, I had this the time I was playing cricket, mate. I never realized that, I was suffering from this syndrome. Like it's related to what I'm trying to say is that, how you manage these players. You don't realize what the players undergo during a tour or functioning in a bubble. I saw a post by Chaminda Was that saying that after 80 days, that are back home. Go up 80 days in a bubble, that is 2.5 months, mate. That is insane. And I don't think as a human I could do that. Seriously, mate. I will go insane. I probably that will come out of the room, or unwillingly or willingly I may break the rules. These are unusual times. How could you be in a lockdown kind of bubble scenario? All you see is your hotel room, bus, the venue, and back. That's it. Sometimes you may not be able to even come out of the hotel, which the boys did. They went for a walkabout and got that got punished accordingly. And it's not easy. So the people should realize. Fortunately, Ravi, I have avoided being in a bubble scenario for the last 2.5 years, and probably I might have to go into a bubble kind of scenario very soon. And I'm thinking, how the hell am I going to function, Boa? It wasn't easy, mate. 2 weeks, lockdown in Colombo. You know how hard it was, Ravi. That functioning in a room, and at least there, you are at home. You have the privilege of opening the gate and running behind a chumpang or whatever to grab a loaf of bread. That kind of thing happening. But if you are in a team scenario, you're not even allowed to come out of the room. So it's hard. It's tough. So that's these are unreal times that we are living in. So we got to understand what is happening. But if you want to talk about the selfish athlete syndrome and the player burnouts, and as managers, how would you address this? Which is becoming a very common scenario. It's very sad to see. 3 days back, a guy like Ben Stokes, whom we thought that one of the toughest athletes going around, regardless cricket or rugby, was a tough boy. Suddenly to see the boy breaking down. And then I saw in Olympics, a couple of gymnasts, going down, and a few players pulling out, and the player burnout is becoming a major issue. And as managers, how do you handle this kind of scenario, boys?
I'll let Ravi go first. I've been chattering away. So Ravi.
Charith, again, it's complicated as much as the subject is. I think it's a very thin line. Now I need to talk about if I'm talking about athletes per se. So we're talking about a very short span of life, right, Bo? On the job. So what that immediately does is it enhances your stress levels to deliver sooner rather than later. Because if you don't deliver, you're out of the equation. You're lost. So you put so much of time in your life. Your parents have invested. I don't know whether this happens in that part of the world. I don't think it really happens. But in our part of the world, we know where moms probably sell their chains and buy a bat for the son. They go into that level. Sometimes when the boys are going overseas, they don't have money. They borrow money from someone else. They come back, they get dropped. They can't pay the money back. So all these are stress-related matters. I don't know whether you guys are going to buy this story, but I talk to my boys a lot about meditating and the need to stay close to God spiritually, because that can help. That's one part of it, right? Leaving that aside, at the end of the day, if you are not a sort of little bit selfish, I don't think you will probably make the grade, boy. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's reality. That's reality. I mean, we've heard even about the world's best cricketer ever produced, Sir Donald Bradman. If you talk to Ian Chappell about him, he'll say the selfish bastard. That's what he'll call it, because he was worried only about all what he wanted. I think it's evolving all the time. The players are finding. I think they are like in a bubble all the time, even when they are not in a bubble. If you look at their lives.
Yeah, and Ravi, I think the selfish athlete syndrome. Yes, what you're talking about is like how the selfishness applies in a team scenario. Yeah. And then we're talking about a individual scenario. What it means that selfish athlete syndrome. I did a research on it. It says, as an individual athlete, that what happens is when your focus becomes the performance, that on-field performances, you perhaps will become successful on field, but as a result, that you can suffer.
You're a non-entity outside.
That your family life could suffer. That's we have seen it. Over a period of time that we have seen it is happening to so many players, that you may be very successful in whatever you do in life because you are so focused, you are channeling all your energies into that particular area, but then your other areas they crumble, they collapse, as managers. My question, how would you said that you ask players to meditate, and how you create a balance to have the right balance in your life, boy. I think that's what the selfish athlete syndrome is all about, which can lead to player burnouts. All that what you said, back of your mind, how much your family has sacrificed in order for you to get there into the position that you are in. And then again, you simply don't have time to pay it back or show your gratitude or whatever, because you are caught up in this small world that you exist, and your one side of the coin, one side of the life is fulfilled, whereas the other side, continue to crumble. And it just, someday that you end up with a player burnout, and or that you will, perhaps that's the end of your sporting career as well, which is, as managers, how is it a problem, and how best can we handle this? That's what I'm asking, Boa.
So CS, if I can, I'll jump on the back end, because Ravi gave a brilliant summation of the front end, which I would have gone over as well. So a couple of things to the audience, for the benefit of the audience. What you have to understand is high performance is less than 1% of the entire sporting community. So sporting community is, recreational people who would play cricket on the weekend, throw the ball around, go for a walk. So whatever those sports codes are, people who, play that sport for a living, who entertain, where, we, like, for example, in Sri Lanka, there's a game of cricket, everyone stops and watches. So they get paid to do their trade. So to become a high performance athlete, you can't train like a recreation athlete. It's never going to work. Okay. So the reality is high performance athletes have to be very immersed and obsessed, quite literally, with their craft. And to do that, they have to train. Now, again, 95% of athletes will do the physical training, but not the psychological training, because in most sports codes, we're still far behind that, and coaches don't have the tools to actually coach their players on the psychological side of it. So the biggest misconception here is the general public, because this part of the equation is not discussed or educated through the mainstream media, they tend to judge high performance athletes the way they would perceive what a recreational athlete or recreation sports person, whatever it is judged on. Okay. So the reality is, without being selfish, you're not, to a certain degree, you're not actually going to deliver the results desired by the fee-paying public. Best example I give you is that the movie Gladiator. Remember Russell Crowe, where he goes and absolutely demolishes everyone in front of him, and then he throws a sword into the box, the gallery, or what you'd call a corporate box, and he says, "Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?" That's what high performance is actually in a nutshell. It's all about the athlete, and the athlete is asking, well, what more do I need to do to keep you lot entertained? So, you have to, as managers, we can see telltale signs on how they, how they respond to the general public, the public interactions, how they speak to the media. So we have to now start coaching them, educating them, so that we strike a balance. The real problem with this whole correlating the selfish athlete syndrome and high performance is, when you're so obsessed with your performance, it all becomes about yourself. Because the reality is, in an ultra competitive field, so for example, a sport like mixed martial arts, MMA, the biggest organization is the UFC. The reality is, it's a cutthroat, ruthless organization. One mistake and chances are you could get seriously hurt, or that's the end of your career. So you have to be so focused, and you have to really put the work in, and you have to be selfish. You look at some of these fighters on a press conference day. The ego, everything is about, I've done this, I'm the best, I'm the greatest, I can beat anybody. The reality is, they have to be like that, because if they don't believe in themselves, how can they expect anyone else to believe in them? So I think that's a very fair question. And I think the general public needs to understand this. And because there's not enough understanding around this, soon as someone would come out and make a statement saying, hey, look, I'm the greatest, I can do this, I can do that, they then get portrayed as being arrogant. So it's a fine line. It's a real fine line. And in the coaching sphere, I mean, I'm a coach educator, I'm a coach developer, I work with a lot of coaches. This is something I continually push forward in the coaching armory, where we can actually, from a mental skills point of view, how do we strike a balance? And some of the best examples I can give you is Tiger Woods. He's super successful, but we can all see in his personal life, it's quite literally a car wreck. It's a car crash. And then you look at guys like Roger Federer, who actually started very late in play. And there is another point which I will get into, which is early specialization of particularly places like Sri Lanka. I remember my parents, ever since I could literally walk or run, they wanted me to do sport. And the amount of hours I practiced, because again, that's early specialization. That's a school of thought where that if you get your kids to do the hours, do the volume, that they will get really good and go all the way to high performance. That's one school of thought. But there's plenty of evidence and scientific research to show that eventually it doesn't matter which route you pick, whether it's early specialization or you're a late bloomer, eventually you're going to make it to the high performance if you're good enough. So
exactly,
two clear-cut examples: Tiger Woods, great, one of the greatest of all time, but personal life absolute mess. And then you look someone like Roger Federer, late bloomer, great skills. He's an ambassador for Rolex. He's the most gentleman-esque professional athlete in probably the modern era. So there's all these things we need to understand. So hopefully that gives the audience a bit of a perspective on what to expect about selfishness.
Absolutely. Out of 22 million, only 11 can represent the country. So you got to be absolute freak, or I think at times you got to be selfish. Otherwise you can't make it to the top. So there is no argument in there. As Sanjeev rightly says, Amazon did not get here without putting thousands of business into bankruptcy. True. That's called competition. In sports, athletes have to be ultra competitive, selfish. Yes, agreed. Not to the extent that you do harm to your team or to the others, but selfishness is part of it. Yeah, Ravi, go on, mate.
Using Boa's analysis as the 1% who are actually high performers. Now, I'm going to ask you a question, something which Dean Jones, rest in peace, asked me one day. Do you know, Charith, that if you take Boa, probably you don't know it. I just found out when I met him, he told me the story. Out of all the professional athletes in the world, I'm talking about the Tigers, the Tendulkars, the Muhammad Alis, the Bjornborgs, the Djokovic, the whatever you talk, whoever you mention, all the big time athletes, the entire world. Do you know how many percent retire with less than $10,000 in their bank account and drive a car which is probably valued $5,000 and below? How many percent of that?
I would say at least 9 out of 10.
Spot on. 91%, Charith, of the athletes in the world, 91% retire with less than $10,000. Thanks to the dollar today, it'll be 2 million in Sri Lanka, but otherwise it will be 180, whatever. And they drive a car which is less than $5,000 US dollars. Right? So that's what it's all about. So they have to be selfish. They have to, make their pound, find their pound of flesh, so to speak. And they're freaks. So who's there to support them? That's where you need these talent business managers to come in. Charith, I'll take a bet. You played for Sri Lanka cricket. Did you ever own a visiting card? No. Okay, I'll take a bet now. Check with how many Sri Lankan cricketers carry their own business card.
Progression, mate. The players have evolved. That we're trying to compare what transpired.
Not yet, Charith. Not yet. That's
not yet.
Oh. Yeah.
Wow.
I'm blown away. I am absolutely blown away.
Yeah.
Wow.
There are three or four. Who carry their own business cards. So that's what managers bring to the table. It's nice.
But being a national cricketer, being an icon, do you have to carry a visiting card? We probably do, right?
Yeah, Dimuth's one of Dimuth's taglines is that he wants to be he wants to be known as a person who doesn't need to be identified. That everyone will know who Dimuth is. That aside, he carries a beautiful card called DK123. So that's where the professionalism comes in, because then they give you that card and then say, okay, you contact my manager and get on with it. Because I'm worried about tomorrow's practice at 6 o'clock in the morning, right? I've got to make sure that I get my 8 hours of sleep, repair my DNA. So he if he's at this conference or brand launch or whatever, she says, okay, this is it, and moves. So we've got a lot, Charith, and I think the players have to be selfish. Come on, we were selfish to get to where we got commercially. Am I right or wrong?
Yeah.
I don't know. For me,
Yeah.
I had to think of myself, studying a little bit more, put in the hours, maybe 20 out of the 24 hours, traveling like a dog, coming back to Colombo at 6 in the morning, just a quick shower, brush teeth, get back to work. We did all that. I mean, that's because we were selfish. Fortunately, I can see all three of us have been doing our running and jogging and controlling our food, so we're looking good at the moment. But
Wow.
otherwise, they're again being selfish. I mean, for me, Charith, if I don't put in my 3 hours 10 minutes of physical training for the week, I'm a goner. So I got to be selfish. I don't even have time for my talent at that time. My phone's off. So that's how it works. So
Excellent.
I think we need to understand these guys. As Boa very correctly said, this is not 25 years ago. You and I would have never been able to even carry on a conversation today unless we were in the zone. If we were one of the, because we are in the zone, we understand what it's all about. So
Yep, true.
it's
All right, gentlemen. Before we wind up, like we have been talking for I don't know how long, 1.5 hours, perhaps. Yeah. Spencer Leon, what do you say?
he's
Boa
talking
can
about
answer that.
the Lions getting
Oh,
acquired
the
by
Lions.
Ashes.
Boa, a little rugby. I know you guys played, proper rugby, played for school and played for club and all that. Mate, yesterday's game was a bloody disaster, mate. I just stopped watching it halfway through. What was it all about? It's taking bloody rugby back 30 years, mate. It was horrible.
That's what happens when the Northern Hemisphere teams all get together and play. Quite right. I'm big on statistics, whatever the sport is. So in 80 minutes of rugby, there were 74 kicks in play.
Absolutely.
74. So it's like watching paint dry. It was boring. It was dour, and it's not a good advertisement for rugby at all. You'd much rather watch the women's sevens from the Olympics because that was exciting.
True.
I missed the sprint because I opted to watch rugby. That's looking for a link and which I managed to send to Rav last night. I hope it worked. Mine hardly it worked. It worked in bits and pieces, but just was that a what? Lions were not going flat out just to keep the series alive. That's very puzzling, mate. That the whole game is very questionable to me. I don't know.
It's
probably
what you call playing not to lose. There's a big difference between playing to win and playing not to lose. It was a blight on rugby. That sort of, that was just boring. It was because there were so many stop starts.
That's terrible, mate. I don't know whether even I want to watch the. I probably Lions will come back and win the third, but I would rather watch a Super Rugby, where a competition, where the entertainment is far greater than if this is what you call test match rugby. I would rather not watch, mate. It's so boring.
Don't worry, next Saturday, Eden Park, All Blacks play Wallabies. The Wallabies are going to get absolute hammering, hiding. So
don't say that, Boa. Be careful. Your Aussie boys.
Half of our audience is all Australians. They're not going to like it. They're going to hate you.
Some of the audience would have seen the show I host on the Papa. It's called Straight Up Rugby. So
yeah.
I never have 1 foot here, 1 foot there. The reality is Eden Park has been a burial grounds for the Wallabies. It's not going to change next week. And I've seen this movie before, guys. I've seen this movie before. I think it's going to be a good old-fashioned hiding. And guess what? I can't wait.
Well, it's very few teams have done the inevitable, or not the inevitable. I would say the impossible. I can't even recall who has beaten All Blacks back home at Eden Park. Man. No chance.
France was back in 1994.
Only good teams can beat the Blacks. Come on, Charith, don't even ask a question like that.
Well, I don't want to talk about French too much, mate. My opinion on French is not that great.
Guys talking about rugby, I got some sad news. I just saw a WhatsApp group. You guys remember a guy called Sandy Keller who played for Havelocks?
Yes. Scrum
Okay,
half.
yeah.
No, that is Sandy Hamid.
Sandy Keller. Yeah.
We just lost him a few minutes ago.
Oh, that's sad news. Anyone who's watching,
Very
that's the
Oh, hands
condolences
up.
to his family. I remember very well. And then Ravi asked, just quickly, Ravi Samarkand, all the way from Aussie. End goal is a paradigm shift that needs to be established with a long-term approach. Goa, you are making a real expert approach, but suggest that you guys try and give the audience on a strategy that may work, covering mental health, being selfish for the outcome. I think we spoke about it, isn't it? That selfishness is an ingredient that is paramount. That in order for any, apart from a sportsman or even for any individual to be successful in a selected field, to a certain extent, you got to be selfish. But that I and I scenario, it's I think how you strike a balance is that's the hardest part. That's where the managers and the coaches come in, and we try to strike a balance. But overall, in a competitive environment, we would not strike off selfishness. Is that what we are trying to say?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, mate. Yeah, okay. Manikam, good to have you, son. Firstly, there should be system to teach communication. We play a global sport. We cannot be on the Stone Age. Well, I think we addressed this at the start, Bo. I think let's just since sad news. Yeah, Aruna, I think he's your teammate. It's very sad news. Yes, rest in peace, Sandy Keller. Yes, it's very sad news. Any reason why, Ravi? What caused the Sandy would not have been. Sandy perhaps would have been a couple of years older to us.
Yeah. My first year at Havelock, Sandy was playing there. A bit of a chest pain. Not feeling well. Asked for the ambulance, and that's it.
So cardiac arrest. Perhaps that's the reason, common reason.
Good
I think going back to the language skills, Bo. I think we address this. It's a Ravi. What's your thought? Seriously, mate. That's how important for. Let me give you. Okay, let's during my time as manager, I have seen. I don't want to mention names. Some of the Indian players whom I have interacted with. Say, I saw them in 2008. The next time, when I saw them in 2010, they were different people, mate.
Yeah.
They have really evolved. I don't know whether the exposure they had, all the willingness, or they presented themselves. They were different people, and you got to. It has to be. It's not a. That what Manik is saying. You probably can do all things under the sun. That at the end of the day, I strongly believe that you can take the horse to the water, but you can't get the horse to drink it. Right? It's up to the.
Yeah, yes and no, Charith. Yes and no. For example, Miss Venezuela doesn't need to speak in English.
That's my point, mate.
Yeah,
that's my point.
So having said that, Charith, this is a game which is predominantly English based. So if you look at commentary or whatever, you don't get German cricket commentary. So probably the closest is Hindi, which is Indian. So when the mass listens to it in English, it becomes imperative that your players who perhaps hitherto didn't speak English. Now, if I talk to a Freedy today in Urdu, he'll reply in English because he realized that this is the way forward. So the fact that it's English, and the whole thing is about English means that the players have to come out and learn. So it's not rocket science. Some of the guys I manage, with absolutely no disrespect to them, I've explained to them, some of whom have had the privilege of having enjoyed the services of my mom, who's a very famous speech and drama teacher, come out on their own. But whether they have the need to learn is the story. So if you are going to say that I can get a 100 and still come and get my manager to speak and do a translation for me, that's it. But look here, if you don't market yourself vis-a-vis speaking in English, it becomes just that much more difficult for us to market the player.
I see your point. I hear you loud and clear. Bo, your thoughts on the matter, mate?
Yeah, pretty simple. You're a brand. You're your own trademark. You're your own identity. So if you want to communicate with the rest of the world, you have to use the most commonly used medium. And of course, it's about learning new skills. I'll give you a really good example. 12, 13 years ago, I had a business which was a predominantly logistics. We used to supply certain goods to multinational companies, and I hired a guy who was a Turkish gentleman who emigrated here. He couldn't speak a word of English, but he was a great worker, and he could drive forklifts. He was like the NASCAR driver of all forklifts. So I pulled him into my office after 3 days, and I said, "Hey, look, I really like your attitude, and you're proactive, but I need you to do one thing." And then, sheepishly, he sort of gestured to me and said, "What is it?" And I said, "Look, I need you to go, take 6 months. I will help you. I need you to go and learn how to speak English." 3 years later, I still recall when I promoted him to the head of all warehousing, he could speak better English than most people who have spoken English all their life. So the lesson here is, you really have a will, there's always a way.
Sure,
and you
sure.
acquire new skills along the way. And, high performance world athletes, there's so many people littered with such examples who could hardly communicate.
The tennis players. Super example.
Yeah, that's right.
Born
That's right.
That is
So-
exactly this is exactly what I said, guys. That I said you can take the horse to the water. That's all you could do as managers. And if the horse doesn't want to drink it, that's nothing you could do.
No. Charith, no way. I mean, you've got to assert yourself. Now, I do manage some of the top cricketers, as you know. I also manage some of the juniors. And
Right.
as soon as they are like about a year and more after that, my communication with them is in English. And if I were to say in Sinhalese, I say, "Puluang tarang kadeng magika kotanda." And they've got to make the mistakes and learn. And then I can see even on their text messages how the Sinhala English changes to English. And then once in a way I hear them saying, "Oh, cheers, Ravi," people who didn't even know English. So I think we've got a role to play there. And some of the guys I managed, to be honest, were not good English speakers before.
Brilliant, great advice. Take your point. Just even the one thing that you guys addressed, that unlike any other scenario, cricket is predominantly, unfortunately, we like it or not, it's played amongst the English-speaking audience. And that's your fan base and whatever you call it. So in order to be successful, the message loud and clear. Learn, just like learning your skills. I think it's another skill to learn.
Skills.
So just to say hi to Senaka Jayasuriya, great show, really fantastic advice, titled by Ravi, Bo, and Charith. Thank you, sir. Hope SL team adapts and put into action. It has to be passion, all 24/365 in any field which is selfish. Thank you very much, sir, for your participation and great advice. I think we try to do whatever we can. As Boa earlier said, that I hope somebody will take a listen to what we discussed and what we spoke, and if there's anything useful that they can take out of these 2 hours almost that we were on air, and just there has to be something good. Equally, there may be there were some technical issues earlier, halfway through the show, that I lost Ravi. Boa, did you lose Ravi? That his connection was kind of distorted, and we had few issues, but not just for a couple of seconds. That I hope people were listening to Ravi at that point, and hopefully it was a problem on my side, and it's all sorted. Again, Senaka has also discussed with them before they go about punishments and team proposal. How we did, Senaka, perhaps that you are not listening at that point. We discussed about it in at length, and we all three of us felt that the treatment that is meted out to the cricketers not acceptable. And if you go through the show, I think Boa and Ravi both spoke at length what needs to be done. And Ravi, De Silva, the players you represent to a certain degree exemplify who you are. All your clients conduct themselves with class. Keep up the good work, and all the best. Great show, Charith, Senaka, Boa. Learned a lot from you. Thanks, Sanjeev. Always a pleasure having you on the show. I think we spoke about Ravi. Always you were very selective in whom you represent or whom you want to recruit. Am I right, Ravi? I think that's
Yeah, yeah,
all.
yeah.
You are
That's
very
for sure.
selective.
That's for sure. Perhaps a bit unapproachable in a sense, but not really unapproachable. Approachable anytime for a chat. But signing up with me, uh, I need to put it in the deep train and then decide whether I want to have a go. Because it has to be win-win, Charith.
Yeah.
Any relationship has to be win-win. I mean, it's not very easy when someone's sent an email to New Zealand and he's told that he's docked for doping. Uh, he doesn't even know what the hell has happened. He calls you and says, Ravi, I've been told to fly back to Colombo because I've been caught for doping. And I asked him, what the hell have you done? Next minute, he's on a plane. At that time, there's no one for you other than your personal manager who will look after you, and perhaps a mentor who will look after and try to believe in a player when a player is telling you, look, I didn't do dope. And then you got to go all the way and trust the player, get some support from Sri Lanka cricket, go over, find the best lawyers in the world, do polygraphic tests, do hair tests, fly over to France, try and prove that the guy has not really done dope for the last 9 months. And then you have ICC coming back and saying, sorry, we made a mistake. Mr. Kusal Pereira actually has been exonerated and erroneously docked. So if I
I'd
didn't
say
believe
that.
Kusal Pereira, if I didn't believe Kusal, KJP would have not been playing cricket. There was no one in the world who believed what he said. He said, I didn't do this. So
Wow.
it's a big tough. It's a tough task. You probably need a network to be in this business. You need to have sport in your DNA, entertainment in your DNA, uh, and more than anything, Charit, perhaps some of the talent managers. I mean, the way people in Sri Lanka look at managers with a squint eye. I don't think that's fair because I don't honestly believe that any of them do squint things in that sense. But the hype, as Boa said, 1% are high performance, the balance 99% think that everything has to happen the way the 99% happens, which is have lunch on Sunday at 2 o'clock and then go to the ground at 3 o'clock and play cricket or play touch rugby. Doesn't work like that.
Right. I don't know whether we missed out anything, in the Boa. Can you think of, there's a message saying Italian wins gold. Italian win goals.
Wow.
Why not?
100 meters, 9.8. Was anybody running, in the last
Give me
data?
1
Italian?
second.
Yeah, Italian running, just
Wow.
amazing,
That's
mate. Wow, we
evolution.
need to. Yeah,
What can I
we
say?
got to watch that. We got to run and watch this, try and see what happened. Yeah, we too missed it. Hopefully, we can catch the replay. That must be amazing. We completely forgot that, the 100 meters dash coming up. Anyway, guys, Bo, anything that you need to?
Yeah, look, just to summarize everything, I think from a player professional development point of view, managers play a key role. Something which has really worked for me in the past, which I'd like to share, is putting in place a development plan for players as well as yourself as a manager, where you learn and acquire new skills. And I can see on the chat, Sanjeev Bernard Fernando said, learned a lot. Well, Sanjeev, the reality is, we all learn every day. And I know this sounds really cliche, but we can't be closed to learning. Our eyes have to be open, and you can learn new things from, places and people you never think you're going to learn. And that's the real cool thing about it. So it's all about evolution, how you evolve, how you get better, particularly in rugby and coaching. Every year, as the year winds up, I think, well, what more is there to see? Have I seen everything? But I'll guarantee you, next year when the number clicks over, you see something new on the field and you go, wow, why didn't I think of that? So it's quite incredible because, Ravi, you and Charith, you would have agreed. Once upon a time, who would have ever thought one day cricket would evolve to this? And who would have ever thought T20 would evolve to this? And this, again, I'm going to correlate this to the short attention span. The reality is mass cricket markets are driven by T20, short, instant gratification. But yet all these people who jump on the bandwagon and try to pretend that they're, as good as Mandela or Mother Teresa in perfection in their own social discipline, they judge, let me say it again, they judge these players who make mistakes as if they're perfect. which they're not. I can assure you that they're not, because Sri Lanka, if now talking about bio bubbles and things like that, if each and every one person who's judging were perfect, the island nation wouldn't be in the COVID situation it is right now. Am I right or am I wrong? So come on, let's get real. Let's get real. The reality is, everyone's trying to be. We're trying to correct the course of a nation by hanging 3 cricketers out to dry. Come on, guys. Yes, to me that's just
absolutely spot on, mate. Yeah, there's so much to discuss. Once again, thanks, guys. People are saying they don't want to miss out the Olympics, and they're all running. I can see that. I think we also should go see what's happening. In Tokyo. Thanks a lot, guys. It's always a pleasure talking to you, Boa, Ravi.
Thanks, mate.
Appreciate your time, mate. For coming on the show. One call, I think you had certain reservations. I'm sure you feel much better that we had this chat. And all the very best to you, mate. Keep up the great work, Boa. It must be pretty late for you back in New Zealand.
Hey, it's 1 a.m, but this is great. I love it. Great vibe, positivity, good engagement, and I got a chance to probably share some ideas, and hopefully people would have learned something new.
So always,
I did, Boa. I did for sure. I just want to tell you one more thing. At the end of the day, rugby union is the world's best game.
Arguably. And I mean, it's a great sport, mate.
2 against 1, Charith. 2 against 1.
No argument, Macha. No argument.
Mate, that we have been there, done that. People saying, that calling names for, when it comes to soccer, it's a great game. It's a common man's game. Does not mean basketball is a bad game. Or the sport is great, but rugby is an exceptional sport. I would not take anything away from rugby. I think it's one sport that you put MMA, that's like sprinting, put you name it, basketball, everything in one sport. It's amazing. And sometimes what you call a bit of jiu-jitsu, bit of wrestling, you name it, everything is in one package. A great game. But I hope
don't forget to say a simple prayer for Mr. Webb Ellis every time you say a prayer.
True, mate. Yeah, and cricket is great. Yeah, cricket is a very skillful game. It's no game is better than the other. That's. But perhaps rugby, I too have a soft corner. Although I never played rugby in my life, though I have trained almost every day with the top rugby players. But it's not training and playing is 2 different scenarios. It's another subject that we can have a chat one day. Very quickly before we wind up, guys, tricky question: do you actually need to play a sport to become a player agent? Does it help?
Nope.
You don't have to.
It perhaps enhances your thought process a little bit. But I mean, if you've got a wonderful commercial background and your sport, Buchanan was not a good was not a great player.
He was a coach, sir.
Yeah, I think it certainly helps. It gives you a better insight into the industry. But no, not necessarily.
Not necessarily. All right, guys.
For example, my biggest successes have been in boxing. Now, I've never actually competitively boxed. I boxed at school and all that sort of stuff. But for me, it was all business economics, and human skills.
Commercial, yeah.
Excellent, guys. Thank you very much for your time. It's always a pleasure. As Boa said, I haven't had a show for a while, so I don't mind spending time with you guys, because as we speak, I learned a lot from you guys. Listening to you, and it's a pleasure and an honor to host you boys. And stay safe, Boa and Ravi. Have you taken your vaccinations? Hopefully you have.
All done, mate. All done.
Boa, I wish you well, mate. You stay safe. You are the one. Ravi. By the way, Boa is coming. He's an amazing guy. He had life-threatening kind of that scenario not too long ago, beginning of the year. He really fought for life.
I know a little bit.
And he's a great warrior, great fighter. He defied odds, and he's there today. And he recovered pretty fast. I watched his progression very closely, I think, and I was there too. Although I was not there physically to give him a hand, I was always checked up on him, check things, how he's doing. He came out strong.
Never a dull day in life, Macha.
No,
just happy to be here, and CS, thank you for those kind words, and I appreciate your support. So I'm just happy to be
well.
here and just trying to make the most of it.
All the best, guys. So until next time, that's people. Big thank you to everyone who watched the show and supported, messages, everyone there, and have a good week and stay safe. And until next time, bye bye. Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Okay.
Bye.